And we are back. Welcome back in to the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I will be your host this evening, guiding you through our college football Week 12 recap show, along with a look ahead to Week 13, which is probably the worst college football slate of the year. But nonetheless, we are here because we love college football, and even in a bad slate, there's still some good games to talk about. And joining me tonight is the correspondent at large himself, Graham Haney. Graham, how we doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing good, Hampton. I will just welcome everybody to flannel season. Me
Yes,
and Hampton
sir.
are full participants in that season. Glad it's that time of year. Not really. It's really
No,
cold, and I
not
don't really
really.
like the cold. But I don't mind wearing flannels. They do look good, so I do like them. Um, but yeah, Hampton. I'll say this: we talk about like week 12 of
Uh-huh.
action. And nothing makes me more excited for the 12-team playoff than coming down to the final end of the season and teams are playing cupcake games to warm up for their rivalry and end of seasons. That will not be missed. So that's my
Hmm.
look ahead for the future. I will be glad when that time comes. But glad to be joined with you tonight. Talk about some college football. Enjoy it.
Yeah, and another look ahead to the 12-team playoff. That Alabama LSU game really wouldn't matter because Alabama would be in, which, as an Alabama fan, I don't really like. But nonetheless, let's move forward. But before we move forward, let's take a look back like we do each and every week. Graham, give me your biggest takeaway from week 12 of college football. What really stood out to you?
Yeah, so my biggest takeaway from week 12, it's not even really a 1 week thing. If you've been listening to the show, you know I kind of like to just big time bold assertions
Mhm.
from what we've seen so far. I picked a couple weeks ago that Oklahoma State and Kentucky were both frauds. Cha-ching. I mean, I should have bet on that. Big money. Would have won it all. Um, but then my takeaway from this week is that there is a big time Clemson bias. So Clemson currently leads the ACC. They have one loss to Notre Dame by, what was it, 21 points?
35 to 14.
Yeah,
Yep.
21 points. There's another team in the ACC that has one loss also to Notre Dame, and that's North Carolina. And North
Mhm.
Carolina only lost by 13 to Notre Dame. North Carolina did play Notre Dame at home. Clemson did play Notre Dame on the road, so there's a difference. However, Clemson in the college football rankings that they put out this week, Clemson is ranked number 9, and North Carolina is at 13. So based off what poll you read, there could be a little bit of difference in that. I think the AP might be North Carolina at like 15.
Mhm.
So you're telling me that two teams, both have lost to the same team. The difference was closer for the lower ranked seed. I mean, there's got to be some. I don't necessarily know if it's recency bias, but the bias is in favor of Clemson. I know that um, their team is probably better. Their defense is definitely better than North Carolina's defense, but there's probably no argument to be made that North Carolina's offense is better than Clemson's offense.
Mhm.
So we've got a problem. Why is it that you can lose to the same team and be ranked so spread apart? I mean, that's four on small like a small four spots and small difference of polls, and then there's others where it's about six spots. So the takeaway is, what has Clemson done to prove to you they're a top 10 team? I mean, that's my big takeaway. I would respect North Carolina, but their defense is so awful that the conversation needs to be there. They're giving up points after points after points to everybody. But Clemson, I mean, you got smashed by Notre Dame on the road,
Mhm.
and you're still in the top 10. Big question mark for me. So that's my biggest takeaway. Hampton, what's your takeaway from week 12 of college football action?
Well, before I get into mine, to piggyback on your point, we're not really a Heisman show, the Pigskin Cafe. I don't enjoy doing my top five Heisman candidates coming into the year or mid season. Like I like having that award play out, and I'd much rather focus on the teams and the conference championship race and all that type stuff. But I would put North Carolina over Clemson simply because they have in my opinion, the Heisman favorite, or who should be the favorite, in quarterback Drake May. That guy is a certified stud. Not only can he throw the ball very accurately at every level of the field, he's also very mobile, and he does not have that great of a run game to accompany him. His offensive line is not great. He's got some good weapons, especially in Josh Downs, who is the brother of future Bama stud Caleb Downs. But Drake May, from game one to now, we're heading into game 11. He has put that team on his back. And the only reason they really have a winning record is because of him.
Yep.
Because, like you said, that defense is like Oprah giving out points to everybody who wants one. And he has constantly had to play from behind or play with the pressure of we got to keep up because our defense cannot stop the other team, no matter if Enterprise High School's wing T offense went out there and played against them. I mean, that's how bad they have been. Love you, Gene Chiswick. SEC Network probably has an open position for you, and I'm sure you would love to fill it in the offseason after a rough stint as defensive coordinator. So I just wanted to piggyback off that I believe Drake May should be the Heisman favorite, and his performance alone should put them over Clemson.
Yeah.
But I got a couple of takeaways from the weekend, Graham, and one is shout out to the Vanderbilt Commodores, baby.
Yeah.
Shout out to them, man. They're 4-6. They go into Lexington and beat a Kentucky team that you and I both scolded after they played the way they did against Tennessee. You called them frauds. I agreed with you. And this is the team that coming into the year I had as the second best in the SEC East. And they have taken a monumental step backward this year.
Awful.
Mark Stoops comes out and makes all these comments about, we're a football school, and him and Coach Cal are kind of going at it. And then you come out and lay just a stinker of a year, complete stinker. You have a quarterback who goes from top 10 pick potential to I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole on day one. A lot of issues in Kentucky, but for enough about them, man. Vanderbilt, I mean, they battled the flu all week. Even the head coach, Clark Lee, did. And Mike Wright, their quarterback, comes in to Lexington. They have a very gutsy performance and come out on top, scoring, I believe, in the final 30 to 40 seconds in the game. So very impressed with him and the job he's done there. I mean, we talked before the year, their over under for wins was, I believe, 2.5.
2.5.
So to get the
somebody told you about the over. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know who, but he did. He's a wise man. And they're at 4 wins with who do they play this week, Graham? Do they play a Powder Puff team?
I've got to look. They play Tennessee next week, so it's probably not looking too.
That's probably going to be a loss.
Yeah. But, which stinks because it's like they could come to it's coming down to the wire. They got to win these next 2 to make the play to make a bowl game.
Make a bowl game, yeah.
And
but
they play Florida at home this week.
Ooh,
so.
You know what? I think they could possibly win that game. I'm not going to predict it, but I think they could win that game. But regardless if they do or not, I believe they'll compete. I think Clark Lee has really established a strong foundation for a program the caliber of Vanderbilt. And get this, folks, this is like sweet music to my ears. Vanderbilt has a better record than Jimbo Fisher and the Texas ATM Aggies, and it brings joy to my heart. It makes manna rain down from heaven, and go Commodores. I love it, and shout out to Clark Lee. He won't get Coach of the Year or anything like that, but phenomenal job in year 2 or 3 at that university. What you got, Graham?
Yeah, year 2, and I know 4 wins is still not a lot, but if you've watched Vanderbilt at all this year, they've made big steps. Like they are close in lots of games. They were leading Ole Miss at half. I mean, they really have a team that is nitty gritty. They will fight. They will pound it. And Mike Wright, that's a special guy at quarterback. So I mean, next year, the year after that, not saying that Vanderbilt's going to win the SEC because we don't believe that. But they will be at the level that James Franklin had them at several years ago. Whenever before he left to go to Penn State.
Mhm.
So
I totally agree. I
yeah,
totally
so
agree.
so I thought Clark Lee was a great hire from, Notre Dame, looking good so far. It was a
Mhm.
tough place to win. It really is,
Mhm.
but he's doing a good job.
He is, and you talked about the quarterback. They've got a couple receivers that are really good players, that are difference makers on the outside. I know they had some success against Alabama, even throwing those back shoulder throws to them, and they were moving the ball down the field. That was basically their offense, but they've got some talent in there, and I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing what they do in year three under Clark Lee. And if they ever win the SEC in football during my lifetime, be looking to the clouds, everyone, because the Lord is getting closer and closer to coming back. I don't ever see them winning the SEC in football. But let me get to my other takeaway real quick, and that is the Alabama Ole Miss game that happened this past Saturday. Alabama goes into Oxford and wins 30-24. And look, guys, it was not pretty. It was tough at times. The offense struggled in the first half predominantly, mainly the first quarter. They had a difficult time moving the ball with any type of consistency. And then Bryce Young kind of got some plays going by using his improvisational skills, moving outside the pocket, making some key throws. The offensive line really kind of took over the game with Emil Ekiyor and Tyler Booker, my man at left guard, adding a physicality to that run game that had been lacking. Jason McClellan, I thought, had a couple really good, hard nosed, gritty runs that kind of sparked the team, and was something that I think has been missing this year. As great as Jahmyr Gibbs is, and I think he's one of the more dynamic backs in the Saban era, I think Alabama's missed having that physical back that's going to push the pile for an extra 3 or 4 yards. I think that kind of helps your team form their identity. It gives them more hard nosed physical football that Alabama has typically played, or not paid, played. And I was really impressed with how Jace kind of stepped up to the plate this past weekend, provided that spark after Jahmyr Gibbs tweaked his ankle. Defensively, there were still some struggles, but in the end, they made a play at the end, which they had not done against Tennessee and LSU. They held firm inside the 20 when Ole Miss was threatening. Brian Branch had a great play on fourth down. Byron Young was an absolute man possessed. I believe he had 11 tackles. He had 2 sacks. I mean, I've always thought he's a really good player. When people say Alabama doesn't have a difference maker at defensive line, I've always pointed to Byron Young that every time he's in the game, he makes something happen. He's either getting a tackle for loss, he's getting a sack, he's being disruptive. But with the way that Alabama has chosen to employ their defense this year, with that 2-4-5 look that they've been doing, which is 2 defense linemen, 4 linebackers, 2 inside, 2 out, and then the 5 corners slash safety that they've employed, I think his snaps have been limited. In this game, Alabama kind of went more back to a traditional 3-4, at least to begin the game. And I think you kind of saw what, with increased playing time, Byron Young could do. So I was really proud of him. Thought Deontay Lawson played a good game, kind of coming back from injury a little bit. His ability in coverage, Henry To'oTo'o and Jalen Moody don't have the capabilities that he does in coverage. So I thought that was very encouraging. Brian Branch, again, made the play at the end, but I can count on that guy week in, week out, coming on Saturday and having a big time game, playing his assignment, being a sure tackler, playing with physicality and an intensity that I feel like the rest of the defense doesn't always follow, but I can always count on that from number 14. Kool-Aid had a great game. You didn't hear his number called because they didn't throw his way. And overall, it was not pretty, but I love the fight that Alabama showed. And I was very interested to see that after you really don't have anything to play for other than getting to 10 wins, but they got hit early by Ole Miss. Ole Miss kind of jumped out to a lead. and Alabama responded. And I thought they played the most loose that they had played all year. They were playing to win, and that it was a joy to win, not they weren't playing not to lose, and that it was a relief if they won. I think
Mhm.
there's a big difference there. They talked about experience and pressure, playing with anxiety, which I don't love hearing those comments. They kind of it's a little excuse making to me, but I don't think they're lying. I think the pressure of the standard and almost pressing too hard has inhibited them in a lot of ways. So I was very encouraged to see that. Obviously, last thing I'll say, Graham, before I kind of get your thoughts on this, offensively, there's still issues. And I know everyone wants to blame the receivers and the play calling. Definitely, they play a factor. There were some drops on Saturday. The play calling was inconsistent at times, but I heard a great point on College Football Nerds, and I've referenced them a few times on this show. But with Bryce being hurt, with his shoulder clearly being or hampering his ability to throw the ball down the field like he needs to, and throwing the ball mainly outside the numbers, Alabama's kind of very limited what they can do offensively, because what LSU showed last year, and I mentioned this after the LSU game this year, they kind of laid out the game plan on how to limit Bryce Young, which was to flood the interior with interior pressure, get guys in his face, and Bryce is so short that he cannot see over the guys in front of him, so he misses those hot reads, those hot routes to kind of get the ball out quick. And so when he can't throw it over the middle, that takes away a good portion of your playbook. It inhibits your ability to run the ball because they're sending more guys than you're able to block. Then you throw in the shoulder injury. He can't throw outside the numbers like he needs to kind of make them pay for that. And you throw all that together, and it's really affected this offense. And, I throw in the shoulder excuse context because I do think Bryce can play better than what he's playing now. But also some of these issues with throwing the ball over the middle with pressure in his face, those issues were apparent last year. So still a work in progress. It's probably going to be like that for the rest of the year. I just find it kind of very interesting to dive in to the schematic issues and problems that they're having. Receivers definitely aren't getting consistent separation like they should, which plays a part in this too. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see with a new quarterback next year if Alabama continues to have the same issues, and there probably is going to be a change of coordinator. So just interested
Coordinators.
coordinators, yeah, probably a change in coordinators, but it was very interesting. Bryce Young, even though for all his faults, he's generational outside the pocket and being a Houdini and making plays off script. Never seen anything quite like it, and it is that and his poise are his elite, God-given, one-of-a-kind skills, and for that, I enjoy watching him play, but I think sometimes we're dazzled with the Houdini, that the mundane stuff that is important to playing quarterback that he doesn't always excel at, we kind of dismiss that because we're so focused on how great the highs are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that if you look at, Bryce Young, how he's playing now, I mean, even at not his best, if Alabama doesn't have him, they've got, probably 4 losses on the year, just not really looking back, but just with an average quarterback, this Alabama team is not 9-2 or 8-2.
8-2.
Yeah, Alabama's not 8-2 without an elite quarterback like Bryce Young, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of sad to say that we're grateful for 8 wins with an elite quarterback. But just kind of reflecting back on the game you just talked about, Hampton, wasn't able to watch too much of it. Was out of town for a wedding. Shout out Tui if you're listening. Congratulations, brother.
Shout out
Uh,
to Jai Hall.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And just my takeaway from the game was Alabama was down at half, but Alabama was down, but I didn't really ever get that feeling that we were losing. which had happened against LSU, which happened against Tennessee. Like the plays that Ole Miss was making and the plays that Alabama was making are like, okay, we just got to tweak this, tweak that, and we're going to be good to go for the second half. And that's kind of how it ended up being. Alabama came out the second half and got ahead and held on to it. Whereas in the past, previous two losses, Alabama went to half and we were kind of like, man, I don't think we expected this. And then what happened? They didn't respond very well. So credit Alabama's response after half,
Mhm.
coming back and beating a good Ole Miss team. Um, I don't necessarily think they're underrated, but it's a talented team that
I
doesn't
think they're
get
properly rated.
yeah, I would say it's a talented team that might not get enough national credit. I think that
Mhm.
people around the SEC know how good they are. The college football, playoff committee knows how good they are, but they're not an everyday conversation. And I would just like to thank Lane Kiffin for getting prepared for his future job at the University of Alabama. So, yeah,
Like the turn of the knife there a little bit.
yeah,
And before we move on, do want to give a quick shout out to Quinshawn Judkins, their running back. Been watching him all year, but that guy is going to be a bona fide stud in this league. He already is. I mean, he set the single season record for touchdowns at Ole Miss, or tied it with
mhm,
15. But if you get, I mean, imagine if they had him last year with Matt Corral playing quarterback. You pair the passing game of Matt Corral with that rushing attack. Ooh,
he's
I mean,
such
and they were good running the ball last year, but he's a different caliber back, and him and Zach Evans are a really good duo.
he's such a physical back too.
Yeah, he is.
He's not a Derrick Henry presence of man. That guy's absolutely massive. But Quinshon Judkins is going to run straight at everybody that comes in
Mhm,
front of him. He's not juking, he's not spinning. He's running straight through you.
mhm. And he, like you said, he's not a Derrick Henry type, but he's very thick.
Yeah.
He is shorter, and just very well put together, very compact,
Yeah.
and really good player. And they're gonna be good again next year. Lane Kiffin has shown the ability, if he stays at Ole Miss, which is a big if right now. I know every Auburn fan thinks he's already hired and is hired to a 10-year, $100 million deal.
Mhm.
I mean, I was told by some that it was going to be announced today. Well, check my phone. As of 7:53 today, there's been no announcement that
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin is leaving Ole Miss for Auburn. So might want to pump the brakes on that. But assuming he stays, they're going to be good again
Yeah.
next year. I think Dart, another year under that system, if he can get a little more consistent in the passing game, then they can be even more dangerous. So, really fun game to watch. Proud of Alabama's fight, and it showed me that next year, with a few little tweaks here and there, with an infusion of new talent and new personnel at key positions, Alabama can be right back on top of the college football world, because the fight in the program is not dead, which they didn't quit on the team, and that was very encouraging to see. So, Graham, let's transition to this week. And like I said, when I Googled, like I do before every show, to see the slate for this week, I was hit with a big womp womp. It's rough. It's not a great slate. I'm still going to enjoy myself watching a few of these games. I'm even looking forward to Bama and Austin P, because I want to watch Ty Simpson throw the ball around a little bit. Um, so that'll be interesting. But we're not going to cover Bama Austin P on this show, and we don't want to. We want to spare you the time that it would take to dive into that matchup and um, look at all the personnel of Austin P. But we do want to start with Utah and Oregon. Utah and Oregon is a very interesting game. Oregon and Washington was probably the best game I watched last week. And speaking of, before I get into that Texas TCU game, Texas should be ashamed of themselves, man. I think we both picked them to spring that upset, and they only scored 10 points. Quinn Ewers was awful in that game. TCU did not put up the points needed or that I expected them to. It was not a high scoring game, but defensively, they showed they could be physical, and they shut down Sark in that offense. And now Texas is sitting at 6-4. You got to be a little worried if you're a Texas fan. This was supposed to be the big step up. You've got talent on that team, but I digress. I don't want to get too much in the weeds there. I just thought about that when I was talking about the Oregon Washington game, which was fantastic, back and forth. Michael Penix Jr. had an incredible game, slinging the ball all over the yard. Bo Nix had a really good game until he got hurt, and they went for it on a 4th and 1. They should have called a timeout, let Bo get back in the game. They didn't. Washington kicked the field goal, and Oregon got it down close to field goal range. Ultimately, didn't get the job done. Bo threw a ball in the dirt. So they're out of the playoff race. But Utah and Oregon, past 2 times they met, Utah has dominated them from a physicality standpoint. How do you see this one going on Saturday, Graham?
Yeah, I want to say I did pick TCU. I
Not
want my
bad.
credit. I want my credit. Um,
You deserve it.
Thank you. Man, this one's tough. It means a whole lot less since neither team is going to be in playoff contention. Because this point last year, it was, is Utah good enough to make it in there? And man, I think Oregon's got some payback to give. We talked about last week how we thought Oregon would beat Washington at home. It's just a tough environment to play in. Bo Nix playing well. They got eked out. I think Oregon comes to play. And like I said, they got payback because Utah beat them twice last year
Mm-hmm.
and dominated them twice. So I think there's going to be some changes. That this is a proven game for Oregon. I know they're 8-2, but you've got to show that you're better than last year. And beating Washington State and Stanford is not better than last year. Beating Utah will be, and I
Mm-hmm.
think they will. Oregon's favored by 2. I think they will cover that as well.
Sure.
I think they'll at least win by a field goal, but I think it's probably a 7-point game.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. I think Oregon bounces back. They should have won that game last week, to be fair. I
Mhm.
think they were the better team. Now, they did let Penix throw for over 400 yards against them, but
Yeah,
I
it's
don't think and while I think the Utah quarterback, Cam Rising, is a really good player, I don't think he's going to be doing that against Oregon. I think they're going to have a little sour taste in their mouth. And they're going to come out and get the big W. It's going to be in Autzen Stadium, 9:30 kick. Give me the Ducks. Give
yeah.
me the Ducks.
Hampton, this is the last thing I'll say about that game. Does anybody throw a football harder than Michael Penix? I mean, the guy he absolutely
He
throws
rears back
120
and
miles an hour.
chunks that thing, buddy.
I mean, I would hate to be a Washington receiver running a slant because your hands are definitely broken.
You better bring multiple pairs of gloves to a game because he's gonna break a couple of them, man.
Yeah,
He threw one ball, dude, that was, oh my gosh, it was off his back foot, and it was like a 60-yard bomb. Then he got blown up by Justin Flo. Just, I mean, doggone impressive throw.
yeah.
What a performance by him last weekend. We're going to keep it in the Pac-12, Graham. This is probably the most Pac-12 propaganda we've had on this show all year. USC, UCLA, biggest game of the weekend, big rivalry game, playoff opportunity is at stake for both of these programs. Who you got winning this one, man?
So they're playing at the Rose Bowl, so that means that UCLA is the home team, but the crowd's going to be dominated by USC fans. I just already know it. Haven't seen anything like that, but I just know they will be. USC is finally back. So I got USC. I think that they have more to lose in this game than UCLA has to win, and
Mhm.
so I'm going to take Lincoln Riley. He's been in many big games before. Chip Kelly's been a while since he's been in a big game. DTR for UCLA. Don't know if he's ever been in a big game. UCLA has been very bad the past few years. And then what happens in the big games this year? They go to Oregon,
Got
lay
it.
an egg. They lose to Arizona last week, so now they're 8-2, so their playoff hopes are toast.
Oh, wait, they
Yeah,
lost?
they lost to Arizona.
Dude, no
I w-
way. I did not know that.
they lost to Arizona. I've talked about it in the pod sometime this year, talking about Jed Fish at Arizona, Jaden DeLaura. I think that they're moving the right direction because Arizona's been very bad for the past few years.
Yep.
So that's a bad loss. I think that USC is going to be able to find something out of that. I think they're going to come to play because USC knows that they lose again, they're definitely out. If you want a chance at it and you want to take over the Pac-12, you've got to win out. So give me USC. USC is favored by 2.5. I'll also take
Ooh.
USC on that one. So a few close games, but I think the spreads are going to be bigger than that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that Chip Kelly and that Bruin program would love nothing more to play the spoiler for their arch rival. I just don't see it happening. Like you said, Graham, I think I picked them to beat Oregon. Oregon bludgeoned them. I mean, they beat the tar out of them.
Mhm.
And I would probably say, from an offensive perspective, that USC is probably more explosive on offense. I know Oregon's been very good this year, but I'm taking Caleb Williams over Bo Nix. I'm taking Jordan Addison over any receiver that the Ducks have. Now, I know they had a big loss in Travis Dye this past weekend. Our prayers go out to him for a speedy recovery, but I think they've got too much firepower. I think they know the opportunity that is ahead of them if they win this game. I'm going to go with the Trojans, and like you, I picked them to cover. And another Pac-12 programming note, California, they about to fire Justin Wilcox, I believe. They got rid of that DC.
Yep.
Chalk up another
One.
one that Graham got right on his top 5 hot seat of the year video that came out a few weeks ago. That's why you listen to Pigskin Cafe. You hear tomorrow's news today.
Or 2
Um,
weeks ago.
or 2 weeks ago. Final game of the weekend, Graham. We've got Georgia, Kentucky. Normal week, this would not be on the slate, but we had to pick another one real quick. How much did Georgia win by?
Georgia's favored by 22.5 points. I think Georgia probably wins by 20. I don't think Georgia's going to cover. They're playing at
Mm-hmm.
Lexington at 2:30. Um, man, Kentucky's such a disappointment this year, but
Man.
and Georgia's offense is really good. I think Georgia either wins by 40 or they win by 15, like 10 to 15. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's a very close game. I don't think it's Georgia won by a few touchdowns. I think Georgia either blows them out of the water or it kind of comes down to the fourth quarter and Kentucky thinks that they can win it, but they really can't. Scratch that. Georgia's gonna win by 40. I'm taking Georgia by
40.
Kentucky
Whoa there now.
Kentucky's offense is awful. If Vanderbilt gives up 21 points to Kentucky, uh, I just don't think Georgia's gonna let them score. They will, but I don't think that Kentucky has enough offense to really threaten Georgia's defense, and Georgia's offense is rolling. So
Mm-hmm.
give me Georgia big.
Give me Georgia big as well. I would say probably anywhere margin of victory 20 to 30.
Hmm.
Georgia has had an issue this year for neutral site games and away games of turning the ball over. I
Mhm.
mean, Stetson Bennett this past week I think had 2 or 3 picks, and that's the only way Kentucky stands a shot to not get beat by 40 is if Georgia turns the ball over a couple
Yeah.
times. But like you, Graham, it's just not a good matchup. Kentucky's offense is prehistoric right now.
It
I mean,
plays
they
into Georgia's strengths. I mean,
absolutely.
Georgia's great at plugging holes and
Mm-hmm.
making you make explosive plays, and Kentucky makes very little
Very
explosive
nice.
plays, and they like to run in holes. So,
Yeah, and Chris Rodriguez is a good back, but like you said, they'll stymie that run game. They'll put it all on Will Levis. He won't deliver,
yeah.
and Iowa's cousin in offense, Kentucky, is just not going to be able to compete
Mhm.
in this game. Give me Georgia big, and they're going to get ready for the Rambling Wreck of Georgia Tech next week, and then take on LSU in the SEC championship game in Atlanta, Georgia, the week of December 3rd. But with that, Graham, that'll do it for another episode of the Pigskin Cafe. I cannot believe we only have 1 week left after this week of regular season college football. My, how the time has flown. But we enjoy talking to you each and every week. recapping games and previewing the next. So we will be back here next week to recap week 12. If you're new here to the Pigskin Cafe, be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, leave us a comment, and hit that notification bell so you can know anytime a video goes live. Be sure to follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, and also on social media for any up-to-date information we have on our shows, polls we have going on, and all that fun stuff. We love hearing from you all on what you think of the episode, what you think of our opinions, our analysis. We really appreciate all the support we've received this year, and hope you continue to enjoy it. So we will be back next week to recap week 12 and look forward to week 13 of the college football season. But the Pigskin Cafe is closed for now. But until next time, chew on that.